Hi, I'm Walt Thiessen from the LOA Today podcast. If you've been listening to LOA Today for any length of time, you know that mindset plays a huge role in what we talk about with our guests each day. You know that mindset is something we all need to work on every day. After all, as researchers have discovered, the average human thinks a negative thought 80% of the time during his or her day, every day. I've been thinking about that fact recently, asking myself, what can I do to help more people like you to reset your brains the way you want them reset? And I came up with an idea for an experiment, and I want to invite you to participate. I'm calling it the Brain Retrainers Club, and I've scheduled a Zoom meeting for Wednesday, October 19th at 8 p.m. New York time, and you're invited. It's free. To register, just visit loatoday.net/brain. That's BRAIN. loatoday.net/brain. See you there. Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen. With me on the show today, Debbie G and Neo Positivity. This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. And it's an especially happy day because we got a full house again, because it's been Debbie some weeks or Neo some weeks, and this week it's Debbie and Neo on Friday, the way it's supposed to be. This is a good day. This is a really good day. And, Neo, I have to say, we really missed you the last couple of weeks. I know you've been dealing with stuff yet, the stuff with your kid from school and so forth, but it's good to see you back here, my friend.
I'm happy. I'm in a different headspace. I was in a great headspace before. Now I'm in even better headspace. And you know what? That wouldn't have happened without a little bit of trials, a little bit of tribulation. It
does work that way, doesn't it?
Yeah, it sucks, unfortunately, but there's the rules in the game. We can complain about them or play within them, so let's play ball.
Oh, yeah. Well, Debbie's an expert on that. She knows all about how things can suck, and then you just have to say, go anyway. She's like the ultimate reverse sucker. She just de-sucks her life.
Just, I'm going to de-suck that sucker. Just, yeah.
Butthurt. That's my favorite thing. I bring up the word butthurt in every interview I do, and I give you credit, Debbie, just so you know.
Butthurt. You need an ambulance. I don't even believe how...
Aaron's losing it already.
He said, what did I get into? I didn't look all this.
No idea what I just walked into.
I won so many awards for victim syndrome. I finally had to create some serious butthurt remedies. And the Wambulance, I'll call on myself when I get into that mode. I want to recognize you, Neo, and tell you that I feel you. I feel your pain. It's been an interesting month, but look at my hair, all these little diamonds right here on the screen right now. We don't get where we're at right now without a little bit of pressure.
I didn't even realize my name was going across the bottom of the screen. I didn't realize that was happening too.
I'm not sure where that came in, but okay.
I must have
Just let us know.
You know what's crazy though? It's great to segue into Yogi. Aaron, my trials and tribulations over the past 30 to 45 days have all been physical. And wow. Physical, out of all the different mental things that can happen to you, get a phone call, a bad email, those things suck. And we work at them. We have our techniques to get through them. But when you're physically skewed.
It's Friday. You get away with stuff like that.
Pay tribute to Debbie with that F-bomb. When you're physically messed
I'm getting it. I'm owning it. Thank you.
Really? So I went, I had some body stuff going on. Some body stuff came up that was brought on just by sitting in this chair too much, and then turned around and got sick not COVID, but the worst post-nasal that you could think of, that probably came from my immune system being lowered from that body system and lack of breathing techniques and muscle movement. So I'm glad that we got Aaron here today. Aaron, please, finally, 5 minutes in, say hi to everybody.
Hey, everybody. Thank you guys so much for having me here. This is probably the most fun I've had all day. So
Nice.
Welcome to your daily dose of happy. That's the way I like to look at it.
Yes, medicine.
It's actually very appropriate because it's probably the most non-planned, non-structured introduction you've ever had on a podcast. But it really summarizes the way we do things here on Friday. It really does. Friday is it's a little crazy. It's high energy. Craziest things have happened on Friday shows because I do it Monday through Friday. The Friday shows, we've had like energy that destroys electronics. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that has happened on Fridays. So you're kind of walking into ground zero here, and I thought I should just give you a little bit of a warning.
Look, and Debbie hasn't even started yet. Are you like
30%
of this hasn't even cranked up?
You all just look. I interviewed Jonathan Goldman this morning. I'm all blissed out, man.
There you go.
Freaking, that dude is incredible. And I just am so thrilled, and it was wonderful. But honestly, I am seriously about yoga that doesn't hurt, because yoga is painful. What the?
Yeah.
Look at, I actually, no, I have lost 150 pounds in my lifetime, meaning at one.
Uh-oh.
And you just lost connection. See, we break technology around.
There it is. Here's an example of it. I'm not kidding, Aaron. This is the way it really does go here on Friday.
it's the way it really happens.
Aaron's like, you guys just have screwed up equipment.
Unstructured. I mean, this is just the way it goes. So, all right, let's turn this into a little bit of an interview here. So you have your own story of demise and pain and so forth with yoga. Tell us your story so that we know what that's about.
He's back.
Now she's back.
You're
now
moving.
There she is.
Stop
She's
cursing.
Well, I want to just quickly respond to what Debbie was saying first, and then I'll get into my story. But that's one of my big things right now is flipping the script on flexibility and yoga. And somehow this whole sort of notion of stretching and flexibility has kind of hijacked yoga. And so everybody, you ask them, like, what do you think yoga's about? Like 90% of the time, 9 times out of 10, people come back and say, oh, that's like about stretching. You ask people like, what their fitness regime is. They'll say, well, I go to the gym to get weights. I have a running club for my cardio, and I go to yoga to get my stretching. And that's not what yoga is about. There's no scriptural reference in any book that you need to stretch. There's no reference in any kind of yoga book that you need to stretch. It's quite the opposite, actually. And through my own journey, I started yoga when I was 18 years old, and it was actually 18 that first time I threw out my lower back. I really hurt myself.
Wow.
And it was shortly after doing stretching. And then as I got older, I started to stretch more. Ooh, my name's appearing on the screen. That's cool.
There you go.
I started to stretch more to fix the problem, and I ended up getting more in pain. And I didn't really realize what was going on until about 25 years later, when I ended up in the hospital, and the orthopedic surgeon said, you're probably going to need a spinal fusion. So thank God I didn't get a spinal fusion, but that started this kind of chain reaction of like, well, how do I get rid of pain? Like I'm a young person, relatively speaking. And that how I can't live my life like this. And I think that Neo, one of the things that I think you and I can resonate, on a lot of, similar ideas, like we're both, into positive affirmations. We both, use the power of our mind. But if the body isn't catching up, then, if the body is sitting in pain, then you can't really do much. And that was what was happening with me. Like, for example, one thing I love to do is hiking. And with my knees being as bad as they were, I couldn't, I had to stop hiking for 20 years. and many things like that. Like I just started noticing that as the pain got more, I started doing less, and then my body became more stagnant over time. And what really started to turn it around was, and all this time I'm a yoga teacher and I'm leading yoga teacher training. So you can imagine like, my back going out on me when I'm leading the yoga teacher training. Not a good look.
No, not a good look at all. Actually,
so,
I thought was, but I bet that was really, how did that affect you in that process? Like as that's happening for you?
It was really demoralizing because, we talk about alignment, we talk about body awareness. I like to think I have both of those things in spades. And so you can imagine like my ego struggling with like, what the heck is going on with
I'm feeling you. Yeah.
And then you mentioned like the painful part, like to get to this place where I had flexibility, where I had this kind of range of motion. It was painful to process. And I'm like, what am I doing in my life? It all kind of came crashing down at that moment. But what happened is I was very fortunate because one of my physical therapists, works with this, a school, called Muscle Activation Technique owned by Greg Roskoff. And Greg is all about teaching people how to activate muscles. And it's more of a manual, it's done through massage techniques, if you will. And we're trained the training is around like identifying weak muscles. And so Greg's whole premise basically, and I'm kind of speaking for him, which I probably shouldn't be, but the whole premise is that pain is the result of muscles not working in the body. It's a very kind of simplistic idea, but what happens is that the brain isn't able to communicate with the muscles. So it's not like muscle strength, like, oh, I can lift 100 pounds. That's not what it's about. It's about the brain able to connect with the body's muscular system through the neuromuscular system. And when muscles are not working properly, things start to break down. You start to throw out your back. You start to hurt yourself doing the most mundane and easiest things. Like how many people have sneezed and thrown out their back?
I've coughed plenty of times and thrown out my back.
In a second, in a minute. I fully understand that. Well, I appreciate, that it's a humbling experience you went through, but gratefully so, because I'm getting pretty turned on to the whole idea that there's going to be a way to reconnect this here. This is pretty exciting. Plus, I'm about to sign up. We're massage. I'm about it. So, but is it that painful? Is it that like painful fascia?
No.
Okay.
No.
Oh, then I'll sign up.
So there's two things that I kind of brought in the whole MAT modality, which is really Greg's department. And when I went, I made the decision to get into studying muscle activation technique with Greg. Mm-hmm. And I did it for a few reasons, but I'm the kind of person that I like to learn. I need to feed my brain. So I thought, well, at the very least, or at the very worst, I'll have a better understanding of the human body. And at the most, maybe I'll be able to figure out a way to bring this into my yoga classes. And after I started, it was like 2 months into it, my mind was exploding because I was like, this is ridiculous what we're doing in yoga. Because here's the thing, when we stretch, you actually start to sever that connection between the brain and the muscle. That connection between the brain and the muscle becomes basically severed. And when I say severed, it doesn't necessarily become cut, but it becomes disabled. It becomes impaired for a certain amount of time. So that connection is already impaired. That connection is already struggling, which is why people like throw out their backs when they sneeze, because their body is not able to contract. The stabilizer muscles are not working properly to protect joints. And so the joints start to go out and then people have problems. Look at somebody when they go hiking and they have knee problems and they think, well, that's just a sign of age. No, it's not a sign of age. It's a sign of the brain is not communicating with the muscles that should be protecting the knees, and they're not contracting properly. So what I started to do was I went, oh my God, I need to bring this into yoga. And that's where I started to create a yama, applied yoga anatomy and muscle activation. And there's a couple of like main premises with the yama. The first one is that we don't stretch. There's no stretching anymore in my classes. I haven't stretched in about 5 or 6 years. And we start to incorporate some of the muscle activation techniques into our yoga classes so that the muscles are able to contract properly. It also, we're flipping the script. So like when you see, I always call him Stiff Biff. When you see Stiff Biff in the gym and he's working out with a trainer and he can't touch his toes, that you always look at him and what's the first thing you think of? Well, Stiff Biff has tight hamstrings. He's got to open up his hamstrings, which is the way a lot of yoga teachers think about the body. It's like, oh, you can't touch your toes. You've got to work those hamstrings out. You've got to open your hamstrings. But what we're actually doing is we're looking at the front body because there's a relationship between muscles. A muscle contracts, the other muscle relaxes, right? And the reason...
Uh-oh. Frozen, like the movie. We got to get him back. I have questions I need to ask him.
I have questions too. I mean, one of the things he said, I really want to know the answer to. He said, it's not about stretching. It's the opposite. And I want to know what the opposite of stretching is.
He's in Costa Rica, you guys. We're going to get him back. The opposite of stretching is relaxing.
Okay, the opposite of stretching is relaxing. Yeah, we saw that. I'm looking.
I think that makes sense. I want to know what he has to say about it, though, because I mean, it's the idea of relaxing yoga. That's not something we normally think about, and I want to know what that is. It sounds intriguing. I actually never really liked yoga. He may convince me that yoga is a good thing just because he's doing it differently.
Well, you know, Walt, I'm imagining 6'7" trying to do yoga. I'm not.
I was going to say it, Debbie, but I'm not.
Yeah, I mean, well, I did because my son they're the same height. I couldn't see Christopher doing it either, quite frankly. So.
And as for touching the toes thing, I mean, forget that because my legs are longer than the rest of my torso combined. You know, it's just the proportions just don't work.
You would need a travel agent, basically. Pretty
much, yeah. That's what it amounts to. Yeah.
I'm so sorry you've been sick, Neo. How are you feeling? Are you better?
Yeah.
You sound a little stuffy still.
Yeah, a little bit. It had like the worst post nasal ever, and it just lasted forever.
Are you taking NAC?
THC? What?
NAC,
no,
not T.
No,
oh,
NAC.
Look where your brain goes automatically. Oh my God.
I was gonna say, Deb, you know the answer to that question.
I cannot. I'm not.
Mucinex. I finally went because I didn't think I needed to go to the doctor. I was just like, it's gonna go away in 5 days. And after a week, because I hate medicine, after a week it was still there, and I'm like, all right, let me set an appointment. But that was Saturday, so now I gotta wait to call until Monday, and then to get an appointment on Thursday. So it ended up being 2 weeks before I saw the doctor, and then another week of antibiotics, and I'm a lot better now. That was just like, that sucked, but it was the body thing that really had me screwed up in the beginning of September. I was at like a breaking point, you know.
You really need to get some NAC, I'm telling you. NAC. Just look up the supplement. We're over here we're giving our professional, non-professional, we're not giving any advice, anyone who just.
No medical advice being given here.
You're not. It's not happening at all. I want to know more about massages and relaxing yoga. And you're in Costa Rica, I just heard?
Yes. Yeah, sorry about that, guys. I think the power went out for a second. My garden right behind me.
That's really pretty. You know, I want to go to Rhythmia in Costa Rica.
Yeah.
Have you heard of it?
To where? Rhythmia?
It's called Rhythmia.
Rhythmia. No, I have not heard of it.
In Guanacaste?
Guanacaste, yes.
Guanacaste, yeah.
Yes. I have not heard of that, though. Is that a yoga retreat center?
It's a spiritual advancement center where they do ayahuasca, and it's a 5-star resort, and it rocks. And Michael Beckwith is there. He supports it all the time, along with and they do yoga there. And I think you should just take a trip over there and meet Jerry Powell. That's what I think. But anyway, so tell me, I'm going to relax my body, and I'm not going to have to strain. I'm about it right now.
No, you're not going to have to hurt yourself.
Thank goodness, I might say.
Yeah.
So, as I was saying, like the body, one of the interesting things about the body is like the muscles tighten up as a protective mechanism. And one of the things that I think is such the antithesis of yoga, Debbie, you were talking about how painful it can be. If your body is tightening up as a protective mechanism, you know, the absolute wrong thing to do is to try and force it open, you know, to try and like elongate those muscles. So we have to ask ourselves, like, why aren't muscles working in the first place? Why is the body tightening up? It's tightening up because it doesn't feel safe. And so we want to get that neuro connection happening between the brain and the muscles. We want to improve those muscles' bodies, you know, ability to contract and contract on demand. So that's kind of like where I bring it into yoga. We're no longer like with stiff biff. We're not looking anymore to work on stretching his hamstrings. We're actually looking at improving the quad's ability to contract. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's what we're looking at doing and improving. So that's it in a nutshell.
I want to ask the question then I was going to ask before you got knocked off by another electronic energetic event. This happens all the time around here. But you said very early on that it's not about stretching. In fact, it's about the opposite. And yeah. I voiced the question. Now they gave their answer. I'm curious to know how close your answer is going to be. But what's the opposite of stretching?
So I'm not sure if you're asking me like biomechanically what's the opposite of stretching, or if
I'm just taking
what yoga is about.
You said it's not about stretching.
Yeah.
You know, stretching is the opposite of what it is. I said, okay, so what is it then?
Well, so there's so when I said that yoga is not about stretching, yoga is a path. It's a practice to help you to manifest and live your life purpose. There's kind of two, you know, in the Yoga Sutras, which is sort of our yoga Bible, if you will, and this is probably one of the most misunderstood things, but there's kind of two sides to the Yoga Sutras. The first part is, you know, we're born into this life with a purpose, and, you know, within you is all that you need to live that purpose. And the second part of it is, because we've gotten into our own way, we need to remove those things that we've created, we've manifested that are getting in our own way. And another word for that is suffering. That it's really a textbook on how to get rid of suffering so that you can live your purpose. And none of that has got to do with how well you can put your foot behind your head.
I'm actually glad to hear that, to be perfectly honest.
I am kind of too. I've never been able to put my foot. I'm 5'10". It's like,
It actually did stop me from being interested in yoga. When I heard and saw that kind of thing, I said, no, I'm not doing that. Forget it. It's not happening.
Yeah.
I don't blame you.
I did yoga when I was almost 300 pounds, and my children sat and laughed. They said, Mom, you look like a sumo wrestler. Mom, stop. Mom! Yes. What are you doing? This was like 22 years ago or so.
Yes.
They were little.
I want to try to offer this to Walt and Aaron. Tell me if I'm remotely correct in my understanding. I did, when I first learned meditation, we did this, this guy would say, you know, focus on your arm, just focus on it, just really, really intently, you know, and then do that for 4 exhales, and then go over your whole body, pick a couple of spots, brain, eyes, nose, shoulder, stomach, and then go to the other arm, and then for 4 breaths, and then 2 breaths to the whole body, and then move, and you do your body parts. And I would do that to get to sleep, and I'd be asleep in 15 minutes. Like it you know, put me to sleep. And that's what I used to do when I had trouble sleeping. And what I you know, with the law of attraction, I started doing yoga because I really do enjoy yoga. But what I noticed is, like, when your arm is out and it's out there, you're focusing on that arm. Mm-hmm. And I forgot to mention this about the meditation. You are healing that arm. What you focus on the most in life grows. Well, your arm's not going to grow in size. It'll heal. Mm-hmm. So the people who meditate and spend time in these poses, they're intensely focused on that muscle because it's slightly burning, which keeps them present, which is the number one part of the law of attraction. which you're not thinking about outside influences, bills, emails. You're in the moment. You're healing that body part, and simultaneously, in healing that body part, the universe is having you do something. Since gravity does hurt, when you hold your arm up for that long, you're physically doing it too. You're mentally doing it too, and everything equals people that seem to be really healthy and happy with their lives. And that's what made me really love yoga when I was able to do it. So does that sound accurate, Aaron?
Yeah, I mean, doing postures is one of the tools. There's a few reasons why postures, asana, like doing like triangle pose or something like that. There's a certain element where it puts you into the present. You come into a pose and you hold it for X amount of breaths and you breathe into that. And as you said, everything happens because of the present moment. The very first words in Yoga Sutra 1 is like, yoga is now. Like, now is yoga. That is the definition of yoga in a nutshell, like the present moment. And everything else is sort of a manual in how to get to the present moment. And so like doing asana becomes a tool to get us to the present moment. What I think happens is, asana can be a tool that can help you, but for many people, it's also become a prison, because the only way for them to get present is by doing this pose. When I first started doing, I was a huge Ashtanga yoga person for many years, especially when I was much younger, which is probably why I end up hurting myself a lot more. But that's another discussion.
What's Ashtanga, by the way?
Ashtanga yoga, Ashtanga, Ashtanga. Ashtanga literally translates as the 8-limb path. But it is a practice within the yoga world. It's like a brand name, if you will, that Patabi Joy started, and it's basically a 90-minute practice. And so I'd meet like these Ashtangis and we would talk, and I'd be like, hey, do you meditate? No, I can't sit still. And I have to do this kind of movement practice for 90 minutes in order for me to become still or quiet or at peace or whatever. But that's not practical. You can't go out into the world when the poop hits the fan and say, excuse me a moment, I need to go and do my 90-minute practice so that I can feel at peace within myself. You should be doing a practice. If your yoga practice is successful, then we should be able to have that ability to drop in any moment into that, that inner sanctuary within where we have all the answers and that knows boundless peace. That is the goal of yoga, that you can access that place anytime.
That's a good goal. I like that one. I like that one a lot because
I like it too, but I'm curious. Is this also igniting the vagus nerve in this at all?
There's many yoga practices that do, especially with pranayama and relaxation. So Neil, you were talking about relaxation, which is a huge part of the yoga tradition and gets the least amount of press. The power of yoga nidra, doing practices like yoga nidra, 61-point relaxation and other relaxation practices. What Neil was describing earlier, like 4 breaths into this arm, 4 breaths, like there's systematic practices to get us into relaxation. People are so obsessed with sleep in the world today. People are taking a ton of medication to go to sleep, and the thing is, like, from our perspective, it's not the amount of sleep that you get, it's the amount of rest. So rest is really important, and it's a huge part of this tradition.
I'm going to throw this in there. When I was lifting, and I'm the only person I know who lifted weights that didn't get hurt, lifted weights. And I accredit that to the fact that I still have it. It's right over there. It's a little red timer. And I would time it 2 minutes in between each set. And people would say, what are you timing? Because I'm over here doing a bench press with my friends. I used to be a cop. What are you timing? I don't understand. We're doing a bench press. What are you timing in between reps? And sometimes you're like, hurry up. I want to go again. No, you want to go again? Go ahead. I'll wait. And that time in between was so important. I learned that early on. It was so important to me. So to hear you say that finally, after all these years, some validation.
Well, Greg often jokes that, he's talking about the importance of rest, and he often jokes like, you'll get someone will go in for knee surgery or hip surgery, but then, 2 weeks later, they start to notice like their neck pain is gone, their back pain is gone, their shoulder pain is gone. Other things that needed time to heal finally had a chance to, heal. And rest can never be understated.
I know I have some situations like that that'll come to mind. That's crazy.
Well, look, I just did a study on sleep, like recently, in one of my psych classes, and they were talking about when we're sleeping, our brain, when it gets into the REM sleep, is this true? When it gets into the REM sleep, that it's like basically the car wash for your brain.
Yeah.
It's resetting everything in there. It goes in there and washes it all. That's why it's so important that we're getting that rest. But so to back up your point, it's about not how much sleep you're getting, how much actual rest you're getting. And I was surprised because I don't sleep as well as I thought I did. So.
Yeah. Debbie, can I ask you this real quick? For a person like myself, it takes about 3 hours to get into REM, right?
Couple hours, yeah.
Couple hours. So a person like myself, let's say I sleep 6 hours a night and I wake up at least once to go pee. So I'm like basically waking up right when REM starts, and then I gotta wait. So I might be going long periods of time without ever reaching REM. Is that correct?
Yeah, I don't think that's accurate.
You don't think that's accurate?
No, I remember taking of course, this was years ago. I mean, this is like 40 years ago, but I was in college at the time, and I remember taking a course on sleep and dreams. And I remember the cycles that would lead up to the REM cycle. And if I remember correctly, and Debbie, you can tell me whether this is consistent with current teaching and knowledge state. But
what
they were teaching, well, then you must know. But what they were teaching at the time was it would take somewhere between 15 minutes and an hour to reach your first REM state. First REM state would last about 2 to 3 minutes. Then there'd be another period where you go up to level 1, come back down, or go down to level 3 or 4, come back up to level 1, which is where the REM state is again. And this time would be like 15 minutes. And each time it gets longer and longer and longer until the last one of the night is like 45 minutes to an hour. It's like a full length movie at that point. And it kind of pieces together the stuff that happened in the earlier REM states. So to address your question about taking 2 to 3 hours, no, it doesn't take 2 to 3 hours to get into REM. But to get to the point where you're doing the deep REM, where there's a lot of stuff going on, yeah, that can take a while because you're working your way through the night. But the REM, you actually get there pretty soon. You get there within a very short period of time, the first time.
Well,
so would I reach that 45-minute phase in the 3 hours or at the 8 hour? Or 7 hour and 15
minutes? The 45 to an hour, that's like at the end of the night. That's going to be, so if you went to bed at 9 o'clock and you got up at 5 or 6 o'clock, that's going to be like in the 4 to 6 range that's going to happen.
You need to get a halo. You need to get a halo. You need to get a halo from Amazon and put it on your wrist when you're sleeping at night, and then you need to look at it. And it's going to tell you. I'm serial. I have it.
I love it.
It's called a halo. My son got me one, and I actually was in shock going, I only get like 3 hours of REM sleep a night, and I'm lightly awake at other times, and I'm all this stuff. So anyway, I want to know, Yogi Aaron, how do we get better sleep? What can we do? Like what can you give us right now, a tool of the trade that we can implement to help us get a better rest?
Oh, Lord. There's a few. There's a very powerful technique called 61-point relaxation. And you basically go through there's 61 points. You go through all of them. There's different ways that you can do it. The easiest way is just to bring your focal point, to each of those points. So you just hold your attention at one point, you go to the next point, you go to the next point, go to the next point. So you can get the 61 points. And it's something that I teach religiously in my yoga trainings, to impart to people because it's one of the most powerful relaxation techniques that you can do. And it's a precursor technique to a practice called Yoga Nidra. And Yoga Nidra is basically the practice of conscious rest. And, I just wanted to kind of respond like Neo, there's some different ideas. What I do know is because in yoga, and anytime you take a yoga class, you always practice Shavasana, which is, one step before 61-point relaxation. So when you lie on your back and you go through some breathing techniques, go through deep diaphragmatic breathing, which stimulates, by the way, Debbie, your vagus nerve, and starts to have a very profound effect. Anytime you start doing diaphragmatic breathing, there's this enormous, benefit on the vagus nerve, which then has an effect on the whole system. But, what I've came to understand is a couple of things. But one is if you're going to go into rest, one of the problems with a lot of yoga classes, the Shavasana, the relaxation is like an in and out job, and sometimes neglected because, a lot of people just pick up their stuff and leave. When Shavasana comes, I've got to go shopping or I've got to do stuff, but that's actually the most important part of the practice. And one of my teachers said it takes 15 minutes for the brain to start becoming quiet. And then for your brain so that you can get into that place, which is like the theta or the delta. I always get those mixed up, but you get into that place, which is the equivalent of deep sleep. And you get into that place and you want to stay there as long as possible because, as you were saying, Neo, that is where sort of the reboot happens. That's where you get, very big rest. And then that, of course, is the precursor to a big practice that we teach called Yoga Nidra, Nidra, Yoga Nidra. And that's like the sleep of yogis. That's the conscious sleep, for lack of better words. But the precursor to that, Debbie, is 61-point relaxation.
Okay.
I am digging it. And you know what? I just saw that you have a 15-day free challenge on your website.
Yes, we do. Yeah.
What's that about?
What's that about? That's basically it's a couple of things. One, it's a way to kickstart people into a routine. Most of the classes there are 15 minutes, 15, 20 minutes, give or take. And so in all of the classes are based on this idea of a yama, which is applied yoga anatomy and muscle activation. So there's no stretching involved. And there's also a daily affirmation that goes with each one as well. And so it's a way for people to experience and begin really a pain-free journey in their body. As we started this conversation, that a lot of people just are in pain in their body. And it's like pain is distracting us. And my goal is to kind of get the body stable, get the body stronger. And I believe very strongly that if more of us can just experience, that fluidity, that strength, that inner stability in our body, that we can start to have that energy, have that space to go and manifest our purpose. So the 15-day challenge is to challenge people and just kind of be like a sideline cheerleader, yes, you can do this.
Sign me up. I'm signed up.
So basically, they get that by going to yogiaaron.com, right? And then there's a link there. Is that what it is? Okay.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Debbie, what's a halo? I typed in halo on
Halo.
Amazon. All kind of stuff is coming up.
No, the Halo watch thing.
This brand.
It's like a Fitbit, but it's not a Fitbit. It's like a Halo kind of thing.
Yeah.
Oh, it tracks your sleep?
It tracks your sleep, your steps, your heart rate, your.
I got a Galaxy watch that does all that. I don't have trouble sleeping. I get my full 8 hours. A lot of nights I go pee in the middle of the night, and I always
quit drinking water so late. That's what I'm gonna do.
Well, I have read this article and it made a lot of sense. It said that if you just drink a bunch of water real quick while you're sleeping, you burn more calories while you're sleeping.
Okay.
And I'm a water nut. There's 50 bottles of water all around me. So I was just I started drinking a cup of water before bed, but I've always went to pee at least once at night because I'm a water nut. And I've always wondered, especially since starting this show, am I not reaching REM? And a year later, I got my answer.
A year later. Yogi Aaron, you turned up at the right time and the right, yes. You know what? But seriously, this is really awesome. I'm all excited right now. And for those watching and listening, you need to go and join the 15-day free challenge. I'm doing it.
Yeah, right.
I'm about this right now. This is pretty exciting.
Very different. But But what I wanted to say, Neo, is, we were talking earlier about some of the issues, like finding an MAT therapist is a game changer. And when you start to feel your body like working as it's supposed to be working, when you feel like those muscles working and engaging, it's a game changer. And many of us don't know what it's like, to have a body that's working until we know what it's like to have a body working. And that's my overall goal in everything that I'm doing these days.
You
really
got me
cool.
thinking about something. Because about, let's see, when was it? I'm going to say 4 years ago, I injured both of my knees, and I didn't know how I did it. And I've actually told the story many times. I went through like 3 or 4 months worth of pain. I finally did a thing with, like, oh my God, I teach law of attraction. I should be able to, change my mindset and fix this thing.
It's funny how it takes us a month or two to catch on.
Yeah, we finally figured that out. And I said, okay, so I started doing it, and within a week my pain was gone. So I actually did pull that off. But I never really figured out how I injured my knees in the first place. The best I could tell you was I got down on the floor to play with the cat, and all of a sudden my knees hurt. And you're the first person who suggested something that kind of starts to make sense about what I did. So you talked about how the muscles really didn't contract properly. What is that about? Tell me about that more.
Well, like, for example, so if we can just like look at the knees, a lot of people, why do the knees always give out in a lot of people? From all of the work that I've done, I can tell you there's a couple of muscles that usually are not working properly. Like for me, I know it was related to my glutes and to my thighs, more specifically the rectus femoris. So it's one of the quads. You have 4 quads. That's what quad means, 4. Mm-hmm. So you have one of the quads, which is this top layer of muscle called the rectus femoris. It actually it connects right at the hip bone, not the hip bone, sorry, the pelvic bone, and wraps right over the knee. And it's like, so when you extend your knee, when you straighten your leg, so you straighten your leg, like if you're hiking, you put one foot up and then you have to straighten that leg so then you can bring the other foot up, which is what I was doing as I'm a hiker. But it took me 25 years to figure out that my rectus femoris, my quads weren't engaging properly. And when I say engaged, they were not contracting on demand. That doesn't mean, again, that I'm not strong. Like, I can do leg presses and whatnot, but the muscle wasn't working. It wasn't firing when I needed them to fire. And so you can think like if a muscle isn't supporting a joint and you're walking, where is that stress going to be held? It's going to be held in the joint. And so instead of the muscle holding the joint in place, if the muscle isn't holding the joint in place, then all the stress goes into that joint. And that's why people get a lot of knee problems. So it can be related to the quads. It can also be related to the glutes. Like 9 out of 10 people, maybe even it's more than that, maybe like 95 out of 100 people, their glutes are probably not working properly. When I say working, I mean like contracting on demand. And so the glutes are like the shock absorbers of the body. If you think about like going down like a dirt road with a lot of potholes, your car's going like that. Well, what would happen to the car if you don't have shocks? And so that's what the glutes are in the body. The glutes are your shock absorbers. So
anybody who's landed on their butt knows that that's true. I mean, this is obvious.
Yeah, it's obvious, but nobody like arrives at that conclusion. And so
what would happen when you don't have a lot of shock absorbers? Seriously, you hurt your back. And that's why a lot of people have back problems. So this is how to build it?
Yes.
Twerk.
Yeah.
If you twerk, I hear that word makes your butt.
You know what? They sold it. You know what? Don't even get me started. Twerking, they stole that from freaking. I'm done with that. I'm not even about it. The hell. No, I'm sorry. No, that's wrong. No. Midnight Star came out with Freakazoids back. I am over the know this stuff. I was taught to freaking Gary High School in Pomona. Somebody mess with that. No.
I love it.
Aaron, I wanted to ask you early in the show, they have muscle activation techniques. Is there like a ligament activation technique or a tendon activation technique, or once they break down because they're like cartilage or whatever, it's just worn down, it's done? Like, or outside of just manifesting it to be better, is there physical techniques they do to reactivate those?
No. I mean, we don't really address tendons or ligaments per se. But what I can tell you is that a lot of people's ligaments and tendons get stressed out and get swollen or traumatized because the muscles aren't doing their job properly. So to kind of flip that around, what happens then is if we get the muscular system working, the other parts of the body start to heal itself. Mm-hmm. And this is kind of like, for holistic practitioners, what they do is they look at like, well, what's not working in the body? And usually that one thing that's not working is causing stress on the other systems. So if we can just get the body will heal itself very quickly. And all we've got to do is just kind of give it a little bit of a tune-up. And from a neuromuscular standpoint, which is the area that we're talking about, all we need to do is just improve that neuromuscular connection, and the body will very quickly. What turned me on to muscle activation technique was, in studying with Greg, was that my therapist who I went there with pain in my neck, and I had a bit of a disc herniation going on, and I had like pain going in 9 out of 10. And I came out with it coming a 1 out of 10.
Wow. Yeah, that's big.
And that's testament to how quickly the body can heal once it starts to feel stable and safe. Once the muscular system is working properly, the body will heal and the inflammatory process will flip around so quickly.
And I'm really interested in your use of the word stress too, because you a number of times you've mentioned how if the muscle doesn't work properly, there's a stress on the joints, ligaments, and so on and so forth. And every time you said stress, I kept thinking to myself, well, there's also the other kind of stress. And I'm wondering if the general stress of life, I wonder if that's what's contributing to the muscles not working properly in the first place.
Greg says, he has a beautiful quote, but he says, from a neuromuscular standpoint, life beats us up because of stress, trauma, and overuse. And so that can be psychological stress, absolutely, physiological stress, trauma, like, emotional trauma. It can also relate to trauma, like you get hit by a car or something like that, or you fall down and break your hip. And then overuse. So like, repetitively making a movement on the body when it's already, dealing with stress, trauma, and overuse.
Right.
So from a neuromuscular standpoint, life just beats us up, and we need to go in and get a tune-up once in a while and make sure those neuromuscular connections are working.
Big question. What's the name of that thing you plug into your car and it tells you what's wrong with it?
Computer? I don't know what you're thinking of.
There's this little like, let's say your check engine light comes on and you plug this thing up and it tells you, okay, your thing went bad and you fix that.
It's a computerized, I don't know.
Whatever it's called. You guys know what I'm talking about. Yeah. Is there a way to figure out exactly which muscle is causing all the problem? There has to be a way, steps that you can go through, because, I got back problems and I could have a foot problem, and it could come from my left butt cheek versus my right or my shoulder,
Yeah, absolutely. There's diagnostics that we do in MAT where we can actually work with people. And one of the very first things we do, we just don't put our hands on people. We do a diagnostic to see which muscles are not working properly. Very quickly we can tell.
Usually what's that test called?
It's a technique that Greg Roskoff teaches, which is called a CAM, a comparative assessment of movement. And it's not something you can really find online. You have to go to an MAT, therapist or specialist to go and get that done to you. But that's one of the very first things that we train in. We train in how to do a little diagnostic of people's muscular systems to see what's not working properly. And it's really fascinating. In my yoga classes a lot, we'll do stuff and I'll get people like, there's a whole shoulder routine that I do, but if you kind of bring your arm up, like you can kind of feel what your range of motion is, and if I take my hand and I can push my arm back, of course, that's stretching at that point. But then once we start to get the muscles working in the shoulders and develop proper range of motion, then all of a sudden you get like this range of motion in your shoulder that you didn't have before. It's quite cool.
When a muscle doesn't work properly, what are we actually saying? Is the muscle just not functioning at all? Is it kind of just twitching? What's it doing?
The definition of a muscle that's working properly is a muscle that can contract and contract on demand. So when you, like, say, for example, you drop your keys and you're going to bend over and pick them up. Well, what are the muscles that are supporting your body as you bend over? Mm-hmm. Well, we've got like all of the abdominal muscles for simplicity. Maybe you've got like the quads. And if those muscles aren't working, Walt, then what happens is like these other little tiny muscles start to do the work of these big giant muscles. So some of the little spinae muscles like in your lower back. And so sometimes when you bend over to pick up those keys, you all of a sudden go, oh my God, something is tweaking in my back. So when we talk about muscle function, what we're really talking about is improving that muscle's ability to contract and contract on demand.
So when those little muscles are taking over for the big muscles just kind of stopped, stopped doing what it was supposed to do.
Yes.
So intricate. Okay, so how do we find a practitioner near us? I'm in Huntington Beach, California right now, and in a couple of weeks I'll be in Hawaii, and then I'll be back in Colorado.
Yep. Yeah, if you want to find a practitioner, you can go on the Muscle Activation website, muscleactivation.com. Mm-hmm. And there's actually a little button there that says find a therapist, and there's different, you can see where you live, and then you can pick somebody out like where you are. Yeah. Yeah. And that's like I said, that's a little bit more manual. And it's great. I mean, some of you guys are dealing with some issues. Neo, you were sharing some of yours, and it's really great because it really gets more targeted, and you can actually start to, work on the things that you need to.
This is rad. So there are practitioners right here in Cali.
Yes.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. San Diego.
Yes. Yeah.
Nice. Carlsbad. This is fantastic.
Yeah.
But to work with you directly, we can do that right online. And I've already joined, and I encourage everybody else too to take the 15-day challenge. I mean, I don't see why not. It certainly isn't going to hurt. And I've never heard of this before. So I have huge appreciation for this is really neat. I'm curious what took you to Costa Rica.
I ended up in Costa Rica in 2007. I was leading yoga retreats around the world. And I came to Costa Rica on a yoga retreat that I was leading, and I just happened to stumble across this property that was for sale. And it just, when you know what you know, mm-hmm. like this is going to be my purpose is to open up a yoga retreat center. It just literally called to me. And then we manifested it, and opened up a retreat, opened up Blue Osa 3 years later. And now we're in our 12th year, this year of being open. So it's very exciting.
Debbie knows exactly what you're talking about. She just went through literally the same thing in Colorado. She's opened a retreat center there. The same kind of thing.
Wow.
It just spoke to her. She knew it had to be the place. Yeah, it was the same kind of deal.
Wow. Good for you.
Thank you.
Good for you.
So we have on Unify this week or next week, it's Mental Health Week all week. And I want to know, how do you feel that how does this work with people and their mental health? What have you seen? What are the changes?
Well, there's so many things. One of the biggest areas, of course, is PTSD. And we see so many people, especially Army vets that come and are able to work through their PTSD, primarily using the relaxation techniques, by getting in touch with their body, by becoming more aware of the present. So all of these techniques help us to become more aware of the present. And then from people who are dealing with depression, part of that depression is, again, it's this disconnect. I know that there's many layers to depression, but one of the number one prescriptions that doctors used to give for depression was just go out and get out of bed and do something. And so from an active standpoint, this is, again, getting people into their bodies, getting them into their breath. And a lot of, from a yogic perspective, when we start to unite the mind and breath, there's an explosion of potential opportunity that happens in the mind. It just, there's this magic that just starts to happen. And in the Yoga Sutras, it says that the mind sometimes forget that the the breath is its best friend, but when we can unite them, the mind is then reunited with its best friend. And it gets us out of that self-imprisonment that we get in, and gets us out of our box and opens up to a universe of limitless possibilities.
Which is excellent. You also have a book coming out pretty soon too.
I do.
Topic, right?
The book is called Stop Stretching, a new yogic approach to mastering your body and live a pain-free life. And we have our date coming up. It's going to be on the 21st of October. I gave you guys the book launch, so you can put that in the show notes if you wish.
Yep, we will.
And people can join. It's going to be on sale that day for $1.99 on Kindle. And if you do that and send a copy of your receipt, you get a free gift from me, a personalized yoga sequence. But I'm just so excited about it, because this whole idea of stretching, and how to get your body more stable and strong is just, it's been this is the compilation of all of that. One of the things I'm really excited about this book too is it's all original artwork. And so I worked a lot with an artist to just demonstrate about muscles and about body postures. And it's an exciting project to bring together.
There's a great picture of you on your webpage about the book launch, and you're in a semi-lotus position. There's a big smile on your face, like, oh my God, I did it. That's the way you look in that particular shot.
I can't believe I did it. As a side note, can I just share a quick story?
Sure.
Because it's just so apropos to what you guys talk about, because I really also believe, once we get clear about what our purpose is, and then we can manifest it. And that's what happened to me at the beginning of this year. I was already coming up with this material and producing it, but my business partner said to me, Aaron, you should write a book. And at that moment, I was like, no, I don't want to do any more work. I'm tired. And then he planted the seed. And I was kind of like, do I really want to go and do this? Is this something I really want to share with a broader audience? But that inner voice kept saying, do it, do it. And so this year, I produced a podcast series and this book. And I'm just I think it's just testament, when we get clear, we get excited, and that excitement can fuel manifestation.
Yeah, it is.
I love that.
It is the fuel for manifestation, that emotion.
Well, I gotta tell you, I was on with Jonathan Goldman this morning, and it's that intention, the frequency, the vibrate, all of it has to be that intention set, but all of it used to encode the body, to encode your life. So I love what you're bringing, Yogi Aaron, and I think it's spectacular. And I really am going to be very interested in this, and this is really cool. I'm not going to say any more than that right now.
Hashtag reprogrammed, everyone. Please hashtag reprogrammed. And because that's what you're doing. That's what we do in this show, is try to boost that. And Aaron, thank you for coming on and giving me all this information. Seriously. I got a whole page worth of notes. I'm going to get your book, and I'm going to be signing up for everything, man. It came at the perfect time. It came right at the perfect time when I was at the end of my rope.
Live a pain-free life.
Yeah. When you're at the end of your rope, I don't like the saying tie a knot and hold on. That's no way to live. I'm not trying to dangle by no string nowhere. I mean, I do fly paramotors, but that's fun dangling. And not on no end of my rope. I don't like to live like that. So yes, thank you. And thank the universe for bringing me all this, everybody, you guys, this show, everything, man. I'm just so appreciative of everything. Big time.
And also, I want to also recognize you for something else. And this is something I've been making a regular practice lately with our guests, because we have some great guests, including yourself. There are many people who have heard what you have to say. Maybe they've read your earlier book. They're going to read the new book. They've seen you on a podcast or heard you on a podcast. But you never met them. You'll never meet them. You'll never see them. You'll never find out about them. You'll never know what kind of impact you had on their lives, but you had impact. You helped them in some way. You gave them a clue. Neil was taking a page full of notes there. There are all these people you've been reaching out to in ways that you've never seen, you never will see, but you've been positively affecting their lives on their behalf I thank you for what you've been doing and for what you're continuing to do.
Thank you.
Please continue to do it.
I appreciate that a lot. Thank you, Walt. That means a lot.
It's so important, and I think it's really important that we regularly recognize that in all of the givers. Neo, you give like crazy. Debbie is just unbelievable how much she's doing with Unify and all this. I mean, the amount of giving that gets done that leads to people getting benefit, and you never find out about it. You got to be thanked for it. So I want to thank all of you guys for what you're doing in that way. It's
you know what? We of course got to push that back at you, Walt. I'm one of your biggest fans, and in saying that, can you tell us more about this Zoom thing that you sent me?
Oh yeah. Well, we have an experiment that we're doing. We have an experiment. We're experimenting with the idea. We all know that mindset is at the core of all of this, right? Whether you're talking about yoga, career, finances, relationships, health, I don't care what it is, mindset is at the forefront of it. And we all know it's about getting into that high vibe space with your mindset. And we know all these great tricks. We talk about them here on the show, all these things you can do, the processes, the affirmations, all that kind of stuff. And I kept thinking to myself, what else can I do to help people who are having trouble, or need a little push or need some way to kind of get to the next level with mindset? And it occurred to me, I mean, Aaron, this is like, I just celebrated the 10th anniversary doing the podcast last month. So I've had lots of people on the show all these years, right? Hundreds of people. And I'm thinking, wow, that's my brain trust right there. So I reached out to all the people who've been on the show, people who'd been involved in the book that we did, people who have been co-hosts and so forth. And I said, let's get together and let's do a group session of basically building each other up when it comes to our mindset. Let's see if we can do group mindset building. So October 19th, October 19th, it's a Wednesday. It'll be 8 p.m. Eastern time, but in order to find the exact time for your own time zone, I'll include a link. You just click that. It'll take you to a place that tells you what time it is in your time zone, wherever you are in the world. But we're going to get together for an hour or so, and we're just going to do some rampages of appreciation as a group, and we're going to do exercises as a group to kind of reinforce each other and build our mindset up. And we're calling it the Brain Retrainers Club. And we're going to retrain our brains the way we all need to have our brains retrained. And it's totally free. There's no cost. There's no risk. It's an experiment to see what happens. And if it works out the way I think it's going to, right now we got 35 people signed up and we're 2 weeks away. So I think it's probably going to work out pretty good. But if it works out the way I think we're going to work out, we'll keep doing it. We'll just keep adding sessions. We'll keep building it. We'll turn it into a thing. So if you want to be a part of it, there'll be a link in the show notes. You can sign up for it. We'd love to have you. And thank you for bringing it up, Neil. I appreciate it.
What sound can actually do? I think that's beautiful.
All law of attraction, all day, every day.
There
Not just for 1 hour on Friday. You need hourly reminders to stay on point, do mental check-ins, and stay positive. So let's get it, you guys. Let's keep doing what we're doing to the world. We're on track. We are on track and on fire.
I'm loving it. And Yogi, Aaron, thank you again. We have said it before, but thank you again. This has been great. We really appreciate your participation and your knowledge and your energy and all that you're doing in the world. So keep doing it. You're doing a great job. And thank you to our podcast listeners. I mean, my God, the podcast listeners, they're like the root of the whole thing, right? Without them, we don't have a podcast, for goodness sake. And they keep, you know what the best part is, Aaron? They keep coming back. They keep listening over and over and over again. I mean, my God, that gives me so much energy. Debbie, Neil, you know what that's like. You're both podcast hosts, right? The listeners, don't they just kind of like fuel you?
They do. Yeah. Well, but we're all here to share, and that's a beautiful thing. I love what you're all doing. Edification and the law of reciprocity. Let's rock and roll. That's where it's at.
There it is. All right.
Take it easy.
So thank you guys very much. Thank you to podcast listeners everywhere. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.